Whoa, green screen.
Zhuzh, zhuzh, zhuzh. Wow, wow, wow. That's the heart chakra, the green, you know, coming in hot, like Kermit. There's a big Kermit from the Thanksgiving parade behind me. This is the only spot I could grab.
That's good. That's really good. I like it. I also like
Gosh.
the Janet Jackson,
Oh, it's a little Janet Jackson. It's a little, I work at the Gap. Like, I'm folding clothes, but I'm also nasty if I need to be. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying. Hey, I'm Dion Flynn. Uh, I'm Dion Flynn. I'm so glad to be here, Kimmy. Good to be here with you. I feel like I'm in your living room with you.
I feel like I don't even know where in your heart chakra.
Yeah, we're in my heart chakra. We are. This was the color of a pen that I had when I was in eighth or ninth grade, and I just loved that color. I loved it so much. It was the first time I remember a color bringing me joy. Actually, that color was a little paler than this, but it's something to do with that. I'm Dion Flynn, and probably best known for playing Barack Obama on the Tonight Show for about 10 years, and a lot of other different characters on late night. And I've been involved in comedy and acting, and I got really deeply involved in acting by going to school for it for a number of years. So I was in a conservatory environment where you leave society for a number of years, 6,500 hours of training. Okay. And you know what they taught me?
What?
Two things.
Okay.
It's a
Thank
lot,
you.
a
Oh my
lot of,
God. Thank you
a
for
lot of hours.
instilling it. Okay.
Oh, I'm giving it to you. It's $210,000
Yeah.
for the following two items, and I'm going to give them to you for free and all your viewers.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. And it's you got to pay attention because you're going to miss them because they
I'm
go
good.
by
I'm
fast.
here. I'm here.
Relax your shoulders and breathe. And as ridiculous as those two things seem, or seemingly like, banal and simplistic, whenever I'm stressed out, that's what I do. Whenever I can't think of something, if I'm doing improv or just, I don't know, in a conversation, a sales conversation, or fathering, being a husband, being in my family, and we get too heated, pop, pop, pop,
Yeah.
pop, pop, the emotions get real high. Before you know what's going on in your family, you can be up to your chin in deep water. Relax your shoulders and breathe. Now, there's some nuance to what they taught me. It's not just two things. They taught me also that you can breathe not only into your chest, but you can breathe into your sphincter. You can like breathe down into the lowest part of your, abdominal cavity.
Yeah.
And they said breathe as if you have lungs in your thighs. Try that once.
Wow.
Yeah. And you can breathe all the way in, and you start to go into this place it's a little unsure. Wait, what am I going to do if I'm not hyper vigilant and focused and right here and worried about what I might say and do? Is everything going to be okay? That a lot of breathing takes me out of that hyper vigilant space.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to talk about the things we pass on both to, students and clients and our own children, our own boys. Breathing is one of the main ones because breathing unlocks some of the other things that I think are so important to passing on. I'll get to this short list that I prepared for this. I'll say it right off the bat. The things
Yeah.
that
I'm so
I
excited. Just
yeah
yeah, go. I'm with you. Yeah.
the short list
Yeah.
of things that I feel that I have in part so far successfully transferred to my son, or he's 10 years old, or am in the process of continuing to pass on to him, are by modeling, demonstration, and co-participation, are crying, meditating, admitting my flaws. Now, I don't mean taking him down a dark, gin swilling, son, boy, I missed some opportunities in my life, But in fact, it's not the big tragedy stories. It's the little embarrassing nuanced things that are much more difficult for my ego to allow him to know about. Like dad made a mistake. I totally made a mistake right there.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, preparing him for the word no, and affirmations. So we can get into those a little bit more deeply, you know, one by one. But let me finish just by way of an introduction. Yeah, playing characters on television and things like that. One thing, you know, with that solid acting training, you know, I've played Shakespearean, you know, tragic characters, lead characters. I won't say it because it's a cursed title of a play. Begins with M.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't want to bring any, you know, I don't want a lighting unit to fall on me.
Okay, thank you.
Or you.
Yeah.
And that background, you know, and acting and going out there, and I was in the Army for 4 years. You know, I don't know, I ran away from home when I was 17, and I wanted to be an actor and something. I just wanted to run away. That's all. I ran away, and I was out on the streets for, you know, 10 months when I was 17, and I, you know, panhandled and wandered the streets of Los Angeles and hitchhiked up to Seattle. And I came back home. And then from there, you know, they say you can never come home. And it was kind of true in a way. There was no place for me anymore. So I went to the Army, for 4 years, learned a lot about being hazed into an all male fraternity. I learned that I didn't want to shoot people that I had never met. I never was in an active war situation. I never killed anybody. And at the same time, all it takes is one Christmas on the DMZ, that dividing line between North and South Korea, with the North Koreans playing "I'll Be Home for Christmas" through the loudspeakers, the psychologically torturing loudspeakers that they would play, for you to realize, wow, did I make the right choice here? I don't know if it was great. Unbelievable. And I'll tell you another thing. When I was homeless at the age of 17, I slept outside. Okay. You know, you had to sleep outside, and you're hanging out with other runaways, and you're making different friends, and it's cold outside and all this stuff. So when it came time to join the Army, you know, I was like, yeah, you know, I'll get, you know, warm place to stay. I'll be risking my life. But, you know, we slept outside more in the Army than I did when I was homeless.
Oh my God, that was the big draw.
That was a big draw.
I'll be so cozy.
I was like, bad planning, you know. I just didn't, you know, that's where I learned to plan. That's where I was like, look into things a little bit. We couldn't Google back then, you know, it was 87 or whatever, you know, so we couldn't Google back then. But I'll tell you, all those experiences, what they've taught me is I'm very grateful for everything that I have. I'm always grateful just to be inside, just to have heat, you know. And I'll jump to a quick story because I was homeless. So it's been 30 years later, actually 40 probably years later. I don't even know. I'm 53. This would have been 52. I took my son out to the park in New York City when we lived in New York City. We just moved. And I took my poncho, and I took blankets and a couple of things. It was a rainy, cold day. And we set up a little lean-to in the park, and we got inside of it, and we hung out with the rain coming down. And I was like in a weird place. I was thinking, is this the best thing to do? Am I doing the right thing here? Like teaching him a lesson? Because he was having fun. But it was weird because like people were walking by, and they were like looking inside, and like, what is this dude doing inside with a little boy inside this tent? You know, and you know, it was just one of those things that you get when you've got a kooky dad who's not afraid to just try something. You know, I'm not, that's one thing that a lot of these experiences have taught me. Just try something. It gave us a talking point, and it gave us a reference point, because it wasn't comfortable out there after a while. You know, it was novel at first, but it was, so that weird amalgam of being homeless, being in the Army, that led to, you know, this Dion dad related lesson.
Hold on. How did your kid respond? And was that, you said, a talking point to talk about being homeless? Because I know he's 10. So in terms of sharing your past trauma with him, like, how did that play out? Or did he know that before? I'm curious about more of that.
The best way I can respond to that is to say this. And and I'll start here. It might seem unrelated, but it is related exactly.
I trust you.
I sing and perform and do voices and all the things we know about. So I was thinking, wow, my son, he's going to have a leg up. He's going to be able to sing early. He's going to be able to do all this stuff. And he can. We sing as a family. We sing all the time. We do musical instruments. We do this stuff. So he has the musicality. But he didn't have, I could see this pretty early, he didn't have that need to be the center of attention. And then I realized, wow, okay, he's not living the same life that drove me to gather the same tools and the same place in the spotlight. So at first I was disappointed, and then I was very relieved. I said, oh yeah, he wasn't a neglected child and didn't feel like he needed to, do these things. So
like jazz hands to be like, look at me.
Hey, everybody. Guess what else I got? And guess what else I got?
Right, that he's loved and safe. Yeah.
So to weave that right into the response about the homeless thing, I think what I got was, wow, this is traumatizing. This is bad to be out here. Like, it's bad, not that we did it, but it's bad to live outside. And I got it in a modern context of my, I'm a different person than I was 40 years ago when I was out on the streets. I was doing drugs. I was doing my own thing. I had medications and things to mute the reality of what I was going through. But when I went out with him, my heart is open. I'm a father. I'm protective. And I realized you don't have to take him. It's just like with the entertainment thing. We didn't live the same lives, and I want him to have an appreciation, but I didn't want him to be homeless. Like, he doesn't have to go be homeless to perhaps develop some empathy. So to your question, how did he receive it? He thought it was fun. He thought it was kind of cool. I do think he thinks I'm a little kooky sometimes, but that I can be trusted,
Okay.
with trepidation, with caveats. Because he knows I can be a little insane, to make a point. So I said I was neglected as a child. Given my family system, there's just no way to deny that. But I also must affirm my parents for some things that they did. My dad, my adoptive father, I had a birth mother and adoptive father, would never tell a story, Kimmy, without grabbing a salt shaker and a pencil to illustrate what he was saying. He was just a natural teacher, and he really wanted to make sure you understood what was happening and he was always checking to see you were listening and catching on to what he was saying. And in that way, and with that methodology, he taught me a lot of things. So my going out there was my grabbing a salt shaker and saying, this is what it's like to be out here. And we've referred back to it many times. When we see somebody who is on the streets, he understands and knows, and we discuss mental illness, we discuss addiction, we discuss the relativity of choice, because there are people that it seems like don't want to get off the streets. And then we talk about it in the context of are not capable of making higher choices because of these addictions and the storyline. We talk a lot about story and narrative, and that this led to that, which led to that, which led to that. When I started doing Barack Obama on national television, a couple of things happen when you play a president on national TV that you don't expect. One is people want you at their IPOs, their mergers, their business milestones and life milestones. I did 2 Sheva Brachots as Obama. I didn't even know what a Sheva Bracha was. I did 2 of them as Barack Obama. So you start to go to these places, these events, right? And they want you to speak. And I was like, well, I can't, I overdid it. I over delivered because I couldn't go in there. They think you're just going to show up and it'll be enough. And maybe it would be, but I had to write something, and I had to write material and make slides, and I gathered information. So I started gathering information about different businesses. And then I came to learn a few things. I needed to do that to feel oriented, to feel like I got, like if I was invited to a birthday party for someone, here's what I did. I asked everybody in advance to send me information about that person. I sent out a questionnaire and they sent it to all the people. So I got the whole gestalt of the room, the person, the people, just so I could deliver my little jokes. Because you got to know who's listening with what ear in each room
Yeah.
to make it funny, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the gag was Obama had, the National Security Administration at his disposal, and I could gather information from all the way back to all presidents. So if I was, celebrating somebody who was 50, 60, 70 years old, it didn't matter. I could go back to other presidencies. That was my gag. They generally didn't care about any of that, but I did it. So then I started delivering this material. What I learned was organizations, families, they have a lot of secrets. They have a lot of troubles because I was always asking them what Judy Carter, who wrote the stand-up comedy Bible, she and I just spoke together. I finally got to meet her, and she had been so important in my life. We spoke together to Irma Bombeck Writers Conference a few months back. I have to say her work completely because it was her work that I borrowed hard, weird, scary, and stupid from, which are the sort of things you need to extract in order to write comedy about a thing.
Yeah. I love that.
So I began to go in and ask these companies, what's the hardest thing about this? What's the weirdest thing about this person? Blah, blah, blah. And people had some, varying responses to answering those kinds of questions. But 85% of people, from large corporations that you know very well to tiny little family groups, answered them. And it helped me make jokes. And I went and made jokes, and they loved it. And they were like, oh my God, we felt so seen. They weren't really saying that phrase, but basically that's what they were
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah. I love that. Yeah.
They felt seen and they're laughing. And I didn't just come in and say, here's my material, deal with it. I wrote material for them. So it just helped me with a lot of skills and stuff. So I was in the bathtub one day and I was meditating and I was lying back, and I'm 6'3.5", and I had to fold up in a special way to lie back in a tub. Trust me.
You're like, just so you have a visual
Just so you have a
while I'm
visual, right?
meditating.
And it came to me, reach out to this one rehab that I know of in Arizona and ask them if you could do, your improviser's mindset stuff. And I put it off for like 18 months. And anyway, then I called them. As soon as I called them right away, they were like, we get it. We love it. Love it. Yeah, bring it in. So I started doing improv with people in recovery. I started doing improv with these businesses because like I said, I started to see the organizational psychology of these businesses just because I was going in and asking these questions from a comedic point of view. I realized something when I went out to go do the improv. They were called improv recovery workshops at the time when I went out to Arizona. I realized I just learned all the time. That's what I love about this work is I'm always learning. I did a class last night online, learning, learning, learning. They're learning from all the cachet of stuff I have and the eye, and I can see and give them this, but I'm learning all the time. Okay, so here's what I started to learn when I began to do it with people in recovery. Oh, wow. Okay. I've been sober 25, going on 26 years. So I'm in that world myself. And so first of all, there was that trust right off the bat. They knew what I was talking. They knew I knew what I was talking about, at least
Right.
in
You
that
weren't just some
arena.
stranger, right?
Right,
Outsider.
coming in and foisting
Yeah.
my, specialties on them. Let's go weave a basket or drum or something. It was like, no, here's what, I would have been dead and I wasn't. And then I found this thing, improv, yes, and in 2005, and it saved my life, basically.
Right.
So I've gone to sum it up and basically say, like, addiction is basically saying no to life. And yes, and is saying yes to life, yes, and is a practice of saying, yeah, let's let this thing flow. Oh, yeah. And I'm going to add something to that. And the playfulness comes. And I also have a theory as to why so many people who are very good at improv and stuff also can hit the party and stuff really hard. Because for some people, especially people that have addiction issues, but thrive in the improv world, it's an area where they're able to let go and sort of trust and play. when I'm an active addict, I'm scared. I'm very scared at some point in my life that I'm never going to feel good or right, or this pain is not going to go away unless I do something. And in that way, if you go by the way the various programs look at it, I have sort of become my own god in this world.
Right.
Because I'm like sort of this large kid. I'm going to munch this or do that or eat that, and that's going to kill the pain. And basically what that kind of living does for people who become addicted is it puts you in this little model of the universe where I'm the center, but it doesn't work. I'm the one who's going to alleviate all pain, take care of all things, and thereby control everything. So
Which is
back to my point, I
you.
was
So then you're like failing all the time, which
you,
then
but
perpetuates it.
it's both because it works in the beginning.
Right. Right.
We wouldn't do it if it didn't work.
Right.
But then our bodies, I was 100 pounds heavier. Our bodies get so blown out of proportion, or you become your lips and throat get blown out through drugs that you just can't take anymore. You only smoke so much cocaine, and then you can't do
Right.
anymore.
Right.
And so this theory about why people maybe that have substance addictions can be so good in this world of improv and make em ups and make believe, is because that artistic practice is very rewarding from a dopamine sense, from a chemical sense. And most people, even those that do have substance issues, will admit that they will concede and they will stay sober while they're doing that. I never drink, when I'm on set. I never do drugs, before, and they'll stay sober for that. And they'll get that feeling of I'm playing, I'm iterative, I'm not the only one in control, I'm letting go, I'm participating. So anyway, going back to working with people in the rehabs, what I began to see was, oh, wow, okay. So these basic tools of improv are the basic tools of recovery.
Oh, wow.
Yes, they are, because it's listening. It's for the first time I'm listening to what's coming at me. I'm building with what life offers. I'm accepting what's actually there rather than coming at it, the way I think life. I think everything's a threat. I'm going to come at life like this, no
Right.
matter what somebody's offering.
Right.
The ability to use those basic tools of improv, which is relax your shoulders and breathe,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
listen to, see the person in front of me for what they're actually doing right now.
Right. Versus what I'm projecting onto you because of my past trauma. Right.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. A willingness to at least see it, perhaps in some cases, and certainly for newly recovering people, for the first time, seeing another human being in front of me. For them, and civilians and recovering people have this, because I've worked with thousands of people, and they're terrified to be still and build with each other in a yes and one-on-one way. They're
Right.
terrified. People, they come to the workshop, because someone in the organization has said, you're going to do improv. Very quickly, they start to understand that I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm not here. We're not here to just be funny.
Right.
It's deeper
Right.
than that.
Right.
So just to finish that out, to make sure I tell the whole story of, first starting out with people in recovery, and their humor is there, their quickness, all of these, their trust begins to be worked on, confidence. I'm just trying to find the imagery. It's like a birth. It's like a rebirth. When you get, okay, so I've relied on this thing called drugs, alcohol, process addiction, whatever it was that I was relying on.
Right.
And you strip it away, right? I've hit a bottom. My family put me in this place. I came here on my own, whatever it is. You've hit a bottom. You say, okay, great. So now you don't have it anymore.
No, you have no buffers.
There's no buffers, and you have no idea what it is to experience yourself without that. And you have no idea. You don't trust anybody. If you did, you wouldn't have had to do that. You would have had relationships and things.
Yeah.
So it's a profound transition from isolation to community.
Yes.
And the improv tools help people navigate that. Let's transpose it immediately, take it over to the corporate environment.
Yes.
People don't realize how isolated they've been, or how much they navigate based on a series of just habits. Oh, we'll go to the snack thing. Oh, we'll gossip. Oh, we'll do this. But do I really just put down my agenda and face you? It doesn't happen a lot. And when people do it, it feels like people get sent back in time to a tribal campfire, and they recognize their fellow humans for the first time. That's what I see people go through. You know, it's funny because I worked with an organization that used the word performance. They sort of got me started, performance of a lifetime. And I owe them a huge debt of gratitude because they got me started a long time ago. This would have been 2006, going into companies and doing like improv exercises. My stuff is definitely informed by that, and it's its own thing. And here's an example: performance. It's this word that evokes a falseness, a mask wearing.
Yeah.
I come from an acting tradition which is about stripping down, simplicity, taking away, taking away, taking away, and then, you know, seeing and feeling, you know, what's there.
Yeah.
I can just recall in my mind a guy, Ken Washington. I was out at the Guthrie Theater one summer, and Ken Washington, who was a great acting teacher out there, he put us face to face. A few actors who were in the summer acting training program. I think I was in a play at the time out there. And he put me face to face with this other actor. And I swear to God, it was the first time I'd ever looked a human being in the face. You know, I could see so much. We know so much. You know why CGI doesn't look real? Because we know so much about what's real. We know what's real. And if it's not there, all the miniature little micro movements, it's uncanny valley. It doesn't read true.
Right.
So facing another human being, looking at them, you know, come down to my son, dealing with all that stuff, my own stuff, getting all the help that I needed. It's probably one of the biggest gifts I had to offer him, was to all the years of work that I did to try to move past some old grievances and old trauma and the way it still sat in my body, old habits, so that and getting in touch with my feelings, mad, sad, glad, scared, lonely, you know. I list them off, you know, so that he knows how to name his feelings.
Right.
Led me to a place where I could hold him when he was crying, and it didn't trigger uncried tears of my own.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, that's why we pacify. You know, I'm going to pass it here. To take this, eat this, shut up, play this game, whatever. Do whatever you
deal. Right. So many parents can't deal because they can't sit with their own discomfort. They can't sit with their own feelings. And so they can't hold space for their kids. And that's what you're talking about.
I'd say 100% what I'm talking about. And I can very quickly go to the place of, and you see those people, they just don't know how to do it. Because you know, I'm a human being. I can get very egocentric and climb up on the pile of my own horseshit achievements, you know, and there I am, like Rocky, on a pile of my own dung. But the point is,
Yes.
you know, when I sat with him, I could feel all those years of crying and not reaching for food compulsively, or some sort of process addiction or substance. And all the times I cried, all the times that I cried, keeping all the things I knew inside. It's hard, but it's harder to ignore it. We have to have a Cat Stevens break every once in a while.
Thank you. Oh my God, it's really good. Okay.
Hold him.
Yeah.
And be his father.
Yeah.
Be his father, which is, you know, not an undeveloped adult child who sometimes turns to their children, get their unmet needs met, but instead someone who has a system around him. I have people I go to
Yeah.
so that I can be balanced when I come to him. These are some of the things that I want to say I got right, but that went right. I have to affirm myself. Some things did go right because I could list for you also other things I do which are not right, which is on my list, which is admit your flaws to your children,
Yes. Yes.
So let's talk about that. Admit your flaws to your children. I try to, and there are times when I'll deny it. I want to win a petty little argument with my child. And I'll start to like I won't threaten to take away his video games, but I will remind him who buys all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that is why you should let me play PS5 golf right now. It's trashy. It's trash.
It's trash.
It's trash parenting. Threatening to take away subtly, just reminding him. Remember, I told you I try to steep him in story so he'll draw the conclusion about the guy who
You
the
let
founder.
him connect the dots.
Yeah, you connect the dots. I'm just going to plant stuff. There's nothing in the transcript to say that I asked you to stop the Georgia elections.
Oh my God.
Ah.
Right. And so do you, after something like that, then admit that to him?
Well, I guess I got into that by saying there's times when I get caught, and I get caught in an ego fight, and my 9-year-old inside me
Yeah.
comes out and wants to win against my 9-year-old who's outside of me.
Yes.
Those are the times when it's trash. There's
Right,
other
but do you then later admit to it? Meaning,
sometimes,
yeah, okay.
sometimes, but I wanted to underscore that one just as pure trash
Yes.
and separate it from, yes, there are other times when, and it's usually after I've had some time to breathe and I've come back to sanity,
Shoulders, right, yeah.
relax the shoulders, yes, done some verb, ka, no. And then I can go, okay, you know what? I'm going to go a little further than just pretend like nothing happened. And I'm not going to go crucify and eviscerate myself so he has to conduct an emotional rescue either.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love
You know what I
that.
mean?
Oh, yes, because
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, I don't want you to feel bad. And then they're caretaking you, and that's the worst. Yes.
And you're building a little caretaker, right? A guy
Yeah,
feels like, yeah,
exactly.
you just go be a kid. Daddy will get his needs met elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. In
Yeah.
terms of that. But yes, there are times when I will say, you know what? I try to clean up the day. I'll go in the end of the day and I'll say, you know what? I'm sorry that I used, such an aggressive tone or a big voice when I was trying to, get you to do what I wanted. And then he'll say, generally he'll say like, that's okay. Or, it's one of those ones where he doesn't go, what are you talking about?
Like he knows exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. And it
you're
feels good.
affirming his knowing, right, too. You're not gaslighting him by pretending it's not happening. You're saying, hey, this thing
Well,
did happen.
when I do it the best way,
Yeah.
yes. But
Yeah.
there are times when, there's gaslighting slips in.
You're like, I gaslight the shit out of him.
Right. It's no.
Right.
But there are times, but gaslight is a great way to put it, when I still want to win.
Yes.
And I won't say that it's about that or that I was wrong earlier. Like we'll be into the second, third, fourth iterations of a fight, but I was wrong in the first moment.
Yes.
But when I'm still heated, I have to gaslight. I can't.
You're double downing on it, right?
Doubling down.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I want to say that to you too. Why? Because I always trust people that I'm listening to who can identify where they've made errors. I trust them more. I just trust them more. And so it's very important for me. It's been the truest freedom I've ever found, is the ability to identify where I contributed negatively to a situation and admit it. Because everything else becomes secrets under the manhole.
Yeah.
And you got to it's bumping and thumping and light and smoke are coming out of it, but you got to stand on it and double down. Let it all come out. Let it all come out. Let it all come out.
What's also nice about that is that you're eliminating or at least facing shame. So when I think about what motivates the not being able to tolerate some space. It's the feeling like I did something wrong. I'm unlovable. Someone once shared the difference between shame and guilt with me, saying that guilt is when you fuck up and do the wrong thing. Shame is there's something about you that's just inherently bad and unlovable. And so
Yes.
that if we really are in touch with the ways we fuck up, which we do all the time, or use the wrong tone or whatever it is, just facing that shame, one, takes a lot of courage, but it does, I think, lead to more compassion for self. And when you have more compassion for self, you can have more compassion for others, which I think is when real connection can happen. When you drop like that performative place of feeling like, oh, I have it all together, but you're like, I'm a human and I'm struggling to be human, and this is where I'm in, and in the process, or whatever it is, which kind of goes back to my
I love
question
that.
about you wanting to promote empathy in your work and with your son, like wanting to do that. And I'm wondering how you got to your, and we'll wrap up after this, but like how you got to your place of really empathizing with other people. You said you had that moment when you really saw another human being in that acting workshop, but like where your empathy comes from, and how you feel like doing improv and being present and listening can promote more of that, because it's something that I really want to do in my work with boys. And so I just want to hear your take on that.
I think my mother passed away in 2005, I think, and then around 2000, I was a mourning. So I was mourning 2005, 2006. And in 2006, I just looked around. Well, I did an exercise called A Year to Live, where I worked out of this book by Stephen Levine, and you basically treat the years as if it's your last year to live. And as I was doing that, my mother died during that year, and it up to and including having a funeral for yourself. I went to a cemetery. It was a whole thing, right?
My God, yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
like a whole
I
thing.
kept a journal, and it made me ask. It made me ask myself, it made me see everything through a different filter, which is, if this was my last year, is that what I would say to you right now? Is that how I would respond to you right now? Let's say I'm having a conversation with
Yeah.
someone. Is that what I would ask for more of what I wanted?
Yeah.
And so it really shifted things for me to go into that mindset. And so I did. So then a question came, then I started to live in questions, living in questions. So I would have like one central question, which was the front edge of my knowledge and unanswerable by me. And I find that that is sort of the beginnings of prayer. Prayer being, I'm going to present a question to a universe that is bigger than one I can actually answer, and I'm going to live in the not knowing and hopes that something comes back. That was sort of me edging my way into truly communing with, let's say, a higher power or something that could give answers or guidance.
Yeah.
But you have to ask a question that's hard enough. See, when I grew up, I never asked my real questions. I didn't know my real father. I was brown skinned. My mother was light skinned. She was white Italian lady. My adoptive father was white. I would say, who's my real father? They'd say, don't ask that. You're upset people. You know, you upset people when you ask these questions. So I learned to put my real questions away for a long time.
Right.
I began to think that God, if there's any kind of a God or a higher intelligence or even a spiritual wisdom, um, that you can't embarrass it by asking a question that's too tough. Don't do that. Ask questions you kind of already know the answer to, so you can live in this system where you'll get answers and you won't be disappointed. And you kind of knew that answer anyway, it was hidden from yourself or whatever. Well, I got away from that because I was in, I was sober for a number of years now, and I needed real help. Few years into being sober, I really big feelings were coming up and I needed help. So I started living in these questions, and I asked this question, which was at the front edge of my knowledge. It was beyond my knowledge, and it was true and relevant to my life in 2006. And the question was this: what is the purpose of relationships? Because I've been trying to work this out by myself, not ever being, having, serial monogamous relationships, but not being close, not really being intimate, not letting people in. I got clear. I wasn't doing that. I would
Right.
entertain people and I would have, fake relationships, but really, like you said, one of the most tender things you can do is really ask somebody to have a real let them know what's really going on with you. Okay. So I said to the universe or whoever was listening or whatever this higher force is, what is the purpose of relationships? What is the purpose of relationships? And answers did not come back right away. And I lived in that question for like a year and a half. And eventually an answer came back, which was sort of an answer and a proof more. It was, however mercenary this sounds, it was true, and it appealed to me. You can go further in relationships than you can without being in relationships. So it appealed to even that ego side of me, that ambitious side that wanted
Right, you're
to
like, I can go further. Right?
I can do stuff, right? Right, yeah. But what better answer to come from whatever God of my understanding than one that's actually going to appeal to me?
Yes.
And get me coming forward. So I said, because it was undeniable, because I was caused to look at the results I got in isolation and the results I got in community, and it was absolutely compelling. I got better results in community. So I was in an improv community. I was doing well and poorly at the same time, because I didn't know how to build with others. I didn't know how to yes and. I knew how to make stuff up, and I knew how to create near people and look like it was iterative, but it wasn't. It wasn't
Like
truly
parallel play.
Parallel play, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I didn't know how to iterate and say, I'm going to bring a brick and I'll wait for your brick because I need your brick. And I'm not going to build something that's 10. I always say in my improv classes, I say, enter with a brick, not a cathedral. Because the only thing for you to do after you've entered with a cathedral being for people that don't do improv, is like all kinds of storyline and offers and things. Instead, I'm going to enter the scene with one brick. Honey, I'm still bleeding. And I'm quiet. And I'll let the person who's playing my wife say, whatever they're going to say back.
Yeah.
But if you enter with an entire cathedral or mosque or synagogue, whatever metaphor you want to use, the only thing left for you to do in that scene is to violently convert others to your religion.
Yes.
Rather than let's create a new world here together. To answer your question, all that foundation was leading to the answer to your question, which is, why then is this work important? Because I know cellularly, and I am a tough sell. Like I have to have my face dragged across the concrete before I will, go along with something.
Okay. Right. I hear you.
And I know that it is more delightful. You will get further. Your creations will be surprising and communal in a way that will nourish my inner self when I build something in collaboration and partnership with others. And to not have those skills of trust, listening, trusting your own your own creativity, knowing not to go on too long and let the other person come in and build together. This interview being a bad example of that, because it's built to be an interview. Yeah. And I always have to say that when I do these. It's the best thing I've ever come across. It's the best collection of non-religious, non-dogmatic tools to help people have fun together, build together, and walk out of the play space and have a better experience of life that I've ever come across.